Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Stephanie. I'm a volunteer with Inside Literature, and in today's segment of Talk with an Expert, I have the great pleasure of interviewing Anthony Rose. Anthony is the CEO of United by Design, a Texas-based mural company that creates custom hand-painted murals for businesses and brands. In March 2020, he was the creative committee co-chair for TEDx San Antonio, and he currently volunteers with the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. Anthony, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and with our students. I was hoping we could start if you would just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me and giving me such a wonderful introduction. I feel like the interview's done. Like I don't have to say anything. No, but I was born and raised in San Antonio, which is just down the street from Austin. I grew up on the west side of town, raised by my mom, and spent weekends with my dad. No siblings, so I was an only child, and yes, I acted like it. I'm very passionate about my art and people. And since I was a kid, and that eventually became my career. Uh, while I was going to school, I played drums through high school. That was kind of my thing. I was really into it. I was always into art and drew in school and kind of doodled on work that was finished, but got into graffiti and somehow managed to get through high school. I kind of skimmed by because I thought I was like smarter than my teachers and I just did the bare minimum. And in retrospect, I probably should have put a little bit more effort into it. But happy to be where I am today, I guess.
Yeah, that's
I
a great segue. What do you do? Where are you today? What do you do professionally?
Professionally, yes, I still am passionate about art and people. So a little bit about that. I'm a business owner, and my company is called United by Design, and we are matchmakers essentially. Kind of like you mentioned earlier, we connect businesses with working artists, and more specifically, United by Design makes it simple for businesses to buy art, original handcrafted art from working artists that work with our company. Um, so we are essentially your matchmakers for art and businesses. Our goal with United by Design is pretty simple. We want to help people around the globe find more joy, and that kind of feeds into like my passion of art and people. And so we built a purpose around this, and we want to bring more that we want to bring more enjoyable moments to people's lives by working in harmony with the world's most expressive organizations and individuals. And so we do that through our mission and what we do, and what we do is make original art simple to buy and easy to incorporate into brand experiences. And that helps us kind of fuel our vision, which is to make art more accessible and by placing it in gathering spaces all around the world and in hopes to inspire people to explore their creative expression. Because as a child growing up in the west side of San Antonio, there wasn't a lot of influence in exploring your creativity and was just told to kind of go through school, go to college, do something that most people will do, or that's just kind of standard industry, and you'll be successful. And I learned through experiences outside of school that that my creativity could take me down those same successful paths, which is finding joy.
Yeah, could you maybe give me an example of a mural that you've done? Like maybe talk us through a mural that you've done for a brand and sort of explain what that might look like to our students.
Yes. So initially, a company will reach out to us about a project that they want to do, and they'd say, "Hey, we're looking to do a mural on this wall, or we want to install some sculpture in our driveways where customers can see it and interact with it." For some reason or another, typically driven by customer interaction, a company will want a piece of artwork done for their company. And so they'll reach out to us. We'll meet with them. We'll hear them out on their goals and objectives. A lot of the time, because, like I said, they're not driven by we just want a cool mural, but they want to bring more people to their space. They want more people to shop with this brand. They want to promote, a set of eyeglasses for Ray-Ban, and we'll help them do that through the kind of natural attraction of art. So we take what in their mind is an advertisement and we pitch it in terms of a project that seems more like an art piece that people can just naturally enjoy. And some aspect of it will kind of fuel their objective or goals. So really when they approach us, they know that they want something creative, but they don't know really what the strategy is behind it. And so we bring that to the table for them. And an example of one project that we did was in 2019, working with the Houston Astros. So they actually went to the World Series, if you guys remember, and they played 10 out of 11 games. In the last game, they lost the World Series, but up until then, they had won. They actually won a good amount of them, and so every time they won a game, we actually went out into Houston and we put up a mural somewhere that kind of symbolized that win during the World Series. It included their caption, which is "Take it back," because they wanted to come back and take the second World Series since their first win. And then we highlighted a baseball player that was part of the team as part of the mural. And so every mural was done by a different artist. And every time we did a mural, we had about 12 hours to do it. So they would win at like 11 o'clock at night. We'd get with the artist, and then over the next 11 hours, they'd create the mural, which was sometimes, in excess of 300 square feet, which is pretty large, to paint in half a day. But somehow we managed to do it, and we created a video campaign. And within 4 hours after that, we turned that video, finally polished and edited, to the Houston Astros, and they posted it on their social network, marking where the mural was. And so at that point, millions and millions of people saw this mural on their social media, on Facebook and Instagram. And then people from all over the city would come out to these murals, take pictures with them, and post it on their social media. So through that project, we got, just through social media, like I think it was like something like 500 million engagements and hits, which is crazy. But it is the Houston Astros, so they can kind of pull in those kind of numbers. And then we also did a lot of what they call shared media, which is when the community comes out, snaps a picture, posts something, and it's got your brand involved in it. And so they call that free advertising. So that's typically what our projects look like. Sometimes they're more just for beautifying spaces. Sometimes a company, however small or large, will call us and they want to do a mural inside their office. And it might kind of be there to kind of influence team culture, or just put something nice there for people to interact with. So
Which is also worthwhile. It might not be as glitzy as the Houston Astros, but also very cool.
well, I mean, you're right, but they're all meaningful in their own way. So we enjoy doing most of them. There's very few that we don't like doing, and I think the reason that contributes to that is because we don't say yes to everybody. We actually say no pretty often to clients, and so that helps us kind of guide, based off of our values. Because at the end of the day, we could be driven off of our revenue, but we decide to be driven more based off of our values and what we want to do. And so earlier, when I told you about our purpose, our mission, and our vision, those are kind of our guiding stars. And we decide based off of that if we're going to do a project. And most people will ask us, like, is there really that much work in murals, like, that you can just turn people down? The answer is yes, like there is. And that has that transcends like all creative careers and industries. So most people, especially in my neighborhood where I grew up in, they didn't think being an artist was a thing that they could do, but very well is. And I know, tons of people that make crazy amounts of money doing it. So
Wow, I mean, it's such an amazing business model, and also I just think it's so inspiring, the work that you do. I totally agree that I think we are told very often that art, whether it's literary arts or visual arts, that those are not money making industries. But the fact is that we all look to art when we need comfort or inspiration or escape or motivation. And so there's definitely a way to carve out a space for yourself in those industries if you're committed to it. Um, so I'd like
absolutely.
to talk a little bit about how I came to introduce myself to you, how I met you. So I came across your work through a series of articles that you're currently self-publishing on Medium. And in those articles, you speak openly about your experience as the CEO of a successful mural company who also has a felony conviction on your record. Could you walk me through this experience for you? How did you get into the position you're in today?
That's a great question. So you're absolutely right. I did publish those things. And really, I guess it's important to mention the reason why I published them. Um, the experiences that I had gone through when kind of first getting charged and then going through the trial system and the judicial system and then going into prison were all really life-changing events for me that throughout that experience, I had heard from people who had not experienced, prison or trial and things like that say, wow, how did you even manage to get through that? Or, I don't know anything about what that's like, and I don't ever want to experience it. But then at the same time, there were others that would come to me and say they would volunteer and come into the prisons and do different programs like, educational programs or business programs. And they would say, I'm so glad that I get to experience this and learn from people who have been here, because there are certain situational things and occurrences that happen that I learned from that I never would have encountered in real life. And that is mostly true. I think the only other place you could be where you would experience a lot of the same things you would in prison is in the military. I've got some friends that have been deployed, and a lot of the experiences are the same. But the reason why I published those stories is because I want to share some of those experiences with others that may have not had the opportunity to experience that, or maybe on the cusp of where I was when I was charged, and may have an opportunity to learn from something that I had already gone through. And so to kind of dive into that a little bit more, what was it that I got arrested for? Well, I was arrested for intoxication, assault, and intoxicated manslaughter back in 2013. I went to trial. I was actually out on bond supervision. I bonded out of jail and was out on supervision for a year and 8 months before going to a 7-day trial, and which ultimately ended in me getting 5-year probation for the intoxicated assault and 2.5 years or 30 months incarceration for a prison sentence. And so immediately after that, I got shipped off to Lou Sterrett, which is a county jail in Dallas County. And I spent about 3 weeks there. And before I was sent over to another unit, which is kind of a processing unit. The Texas prisons have a processing system where certain units are used, where they send everybody and they filter them out to different units from there. So um, I mean, I'm glad to see that the publications that I put out are creating some connections. I've definitely had some people reach out to me when publishing those stories, and and I've had complete strangers like completely open up to me and explain their experiences with somebody they knew that went through the prison system, or somebody they know that was going through a trial. I had somebody approach me that is actually a mentor of mine, and he opened up to me and told me about how emotional it was for him to read the stories, knowing what he knew about me, which up until that time was limited. He knew I had been to prison, he knew what for, but he didn't really know what I personally felt about that, because we just didn't have that many moments like that. He was more of a business mentor than kind of a spiritual or life mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think I may have gotten away from your question, but
No, no. Well, so one thing that I hear coming through in what you're saying is that part of the motivation in publishing these articles is to maybe relax that strict divide between sort of the professional business realm and your background as an individual who has a criminal record, because so often those two things are portrayed as mutually exclusive or incompatible, when obviously in that case, in your case, that is not true. um,
well, you're absolutely right about that. The deal is it's extremely difficult to do even today. I mean, I've been out of prison now for going on 3 years, And I have only recently decided to start publishing those stories. So it was only maybe about 2 months ago that I started publishing them. And it was, and this is, I mean, between my release and between the time I started publishing, I still had so many opportunities to actually get out and share it. Um, in my career industry, there are some groups that get together to have like these sorry, excuse me, to have these kind of conferences and meetings. And this particularly event was built around uh, failures and how they opened up opportunities for success within the graphic design industry. And so I have a background in graphic design and brand identity design that was short-lived before I came to prison, or before I went to prison. And even then, when the subject was failure, it was so hard for me to talk about my experience in prison. I kind of just like hopped over it. I was just like, I did this and I did this and I did this great thing. And then I failed because I went to prison, but then I did this. So afterwards, somebody came up to me and they said, "Hey man, well, it's great that you went up there to talk, but I completely missed the point of like where you grew through that experience in prison." I said, that's really true. And even beside then, there was so many other opportunities where I was getting interviewed for newspapers and things like that, where was the subject and theme was around my career as an artist, but the conversation had come up about my time or incarceration in prison, and I kind of just, I mean, I every time I said something, it was just the least, I said the minimal thing I had to say about it because it's still so very uncomfortable to me, even though, I'm the offender, I'm considered the offender. I did inflict harm on people's lives, and I am the responsible person for the loss of someone's life. And it's very harmful, to feel all of the guilt and shame that comes with that. And so even back then in 2013, working through now, trying to heal beyond that has been very difficult. A lot of the times we say that, we're not, we're not worthy of feeling, any kind of sense of harm as the offender in a violent crime. That's absolutely like very apparent. Like a lot of people who commit violent crimes feel like they can't feel, like sorry for themselves, or they can't feel anything other than guilt and shame, which are just very harmful to us. But at some point you have to say, stand up, take responsibility for it, and only then can you start to like make the gains and learn and kind of heal beyond that. So this for me is kind of not just blending my professional life with my experiences through prison, but it's in an attempt to kind of unify my life and just kind of bring it all together, because it's so difficult keeping these different aspects of my life separate. Like I just can't do it anymore. Like in order for me to grow and become something more than I am today, I have to put it all together and I have to just be myself and be open. And so this is my attempt to do that. Now it serves several purposes. You mentioned, kind of that I guess unifying like active or action or activity between that experience in my professional life. It absolutely is that, I've gotten the courage to do that because I see so many others on LinkedIn, which is, I mean, my squad, my crew, my place. I see so many people openly talking about their experiences through prison or through sobriety. And I got the courage after seeing them do it to say, you know what, I can share this. And so I published that story on Medium, but I also publish it or link to it through LinkedIn, which is a completely like career and professionally driven social platform. So some may say that I have no place posting it there, but I do it anyways. And it's been difficult. I've had friends that have said, "Hey, man, I'm glad that you're so courageous to do this, but I'm nervous to see what happens to your career as this happens." And I said, "You know what? My career is what it is because of my experiences, and like I said earlier, we can say no to some clients, and so it's okay for some of them to say no to us too." Um, so I talk about that in the publications, but I also touch on how, social reformation needs to happen. It's a tool to talk about those topics. It's also a tool to talk about just healing beyond, these harmful situations, which is a thing that transcends just like going to prison or being a criminal. It happens to all of us. We all feel guilt, shame, and fear, and we all have an opportunity to grow through it. And so I'm hoping that people get a piece of that from my publications. And it's really just an invitation to kind of open the floor and say, listen, we all go through things. Here's everything that I've been through. If you want to talk, if you want to know more about any of these things, let's have a conversation about it.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. That's
I know.
all
We could
really,
probably go on for a
really,
couple hours.
no, it's really engaging. It's really interesting. I think that starting the conversation, participating in the conversation, and removing some of the fear and stigma and shame around discussing experiences. And also, when you say that currently you're trying to unify yourself and you can't have this separation anymore, and you can't skip over that part in your story when you're talking to other people about who you are and what you do. um, I think that's something that's very brave and very difficult, and that requires a lot of practice and practical application as well. um, and so I was hoping that we could maybe get into some of that right now,
Yeah.
and maybe you could tell me a little bit about how your experience in prison changed your perspective on your professional goals. um, what was your experience? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the um, program that you went through, and then also sort of how that led you to continue things that you were interested in prior to going to prison, and then how you used that knowledge when you left.
Absolutely. I'd love to get into that. Speaking about my experience, I explained how things kind of were, that I went through a trial, and after the trial, I went to Blue Stare, and then I went to prison. That experience for the first 6 months was pretty unfruitful. I mean, a lot happened, but there was nothing really impactful that happened. And it was really what it boils down to in retrospect is that I just didn't have, I was relying on my own understanding to like try and do something. Or, I mean, when you get to prison, it's like, well, what do I do now? I mean, what is there to do? For anybody that's been in county jail or prison knows that there's like programs you can be a part of. There's like, you can just watch television all day. You could read. There are, if you have enough time in the system that you have to do, you can actually take some college courses through some volunteer programs. But for me, I guess my sentencing was so short that a lot of those educational programs actually I became ineligible for because I didn't have the required amount of minimum time to go through them. And so I was really hungry to do something. Like I wanted to join a program, so I took whatever like short classes they had there. There was a program to do like a peer education thing where, when people are coming into prison for the first time, you kind of give them this orientation and tell them what prison is going to be like and what to expect. So I joined that and went through that program, and actually learned a little bit about public speaking by going through that. But other than that, a lot of my time was just kind of spent meeting new people. Of course, I did a lot of that because I'm passionate about people. I talked to a lot of people. I made a lot of friends, and I learned about a lot of people's experiences and stories. And I ended up working in the law library as a law library clerk. And I did that because I just wanted to learn a little bit more about law and the reason why the system is what it was. And through that, I got to hear about people's cases and charges and things that they were trying to get resolved or trying to change. And that for the time being fulfilled my need to like connect with people. But I still had this sense of like that self-entitlement that came with like just inherently being an only child, and also trying to stick up for myself and defend myself and say that I knew better than others, when it came to my life. And so I was having a lot of trouble with understanding like what was next. I kept focusing on like, when am I getting out? When am I getting out? When am I getting out? And not really on, okay, well, while I'm here, because I'm not going anywhere, what can I do to just get better? And I was one day got an invitation from what's said on the past PEP, and I had no idea what this was. And I asked somebody in the pod that I was with. This is about 6 months after I started that prison term, and they said, "Oh, that's the prison entrepreneurship program. You should go check them out. It's like a big business program, and they teach you how to start a business." And my eyes just lit up. I'm like, "Okay, yeah, let's do this." Up until that point, I had some experiences before going to prison of what entrepreneurship looked like, and I worked for a business, a retail shop who's it was one shop and the owner was the operator, and while I was with him I saw him grow it into a franchise. And so I had this this concept of, I'm going to learn how to do something like that. So I went to this orientation. They told me about the program, which was the prison entrepreneurship program. They teamed up with Baylor University, specifically the Hankomer School of Business, to offer up kind of the curriculum for the bachelor's program for business. And if you get accepted for this program, you go through a 6-month program, which kind of crunches that entire curriculum into a 6-month stint. So you learn how to kind of come up with business ideas, how to form a business plan, how to pitch that business plan, and then how to do financial models and things like that. I mean, it's kind of basic level, like it's just like, this is what you need to know to get started. But it was enough to kind of get everybody fired up about what could potentially happen outside. And a part of that program is this 3-month character development program, which they don't tell you about at first, because I mean, let's be honest, like if you're in prison, like for the most part, you don't really think things are your fault. And so you're like, character development, like I don't need that. But quite honestly, anybody who makes it to the end of the program says, you know what, I really needed to learn about my past experiences and how that was affecting my decision making today. So all in all, it's a 9-month program. You go through character development, then the business program, then you actually pitch to business executives, and every month you get to meet a new batch of business executives who volunteer and come in, and you get one-on-one time with them. After you graduate, you can become a peer educator, and you can start to teach the next wave of students coming in. And you just learn so much about real life, like professional practices. You learn about, project management, team management. You learn about business development, and you learn how your personal characteristics and traits can either fuel the growth of that or burn it to the ground. So that for me, that one program really changed my entire perspective, and it offered me some moments of clarity amidst all this chaos that was prison. And there are a few things that really stand out that made impact for me. One of them, during the program, one of the executive volunteers told me, "Listen, man, while you're in here, use your time wisely, because you're either going to learn how to become a better criminal, or you're going to learn how to become a better person." He said, "You can choose either one. Whatever you decide it is what it is. You're going to do it, but you can't be on the fence. You can't learn how to open up a business, but stand over here and sling weed. Like, you can't be doing stuff like that. Like, you need to decide, like, you're whether you're going to do good or you're going to do bad." And in my mind, that translated into an analogy of, you know, okay, my body is the universe, and the cells in my body are the people. And if we blow that up, then we say this universe is the body, and then all of us, so people, insects, bugs, animals, we are the cells. And if we look at it in that sense, we can either cause the body harm by being a virus, or we can help it heal by teaming together and working together. And so at that moment, I decided that I wanted to help heal the body. So with that came this like new set of values. I said, okay, if I'm going to drive myself and I'm not going to be fueled by money and I'm not going to be fueled by like just going after that as a marker for success, then I have to come up with a marker for success. And for me, that was holding true by being honest with everybody and myself, being a person of integrity, doing what I say I'm going to do, and then also being a wise steward. And the things that and that means by doing the right things with the things that I am given and granted. And then I also had to be responsible, which I was really bad at up until that point. But I figured that if I could do those four things on a consistent basis and make my daily decisions based on getting closer to those values, then I'd be all right. And so far, it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, how do you see those translate into your day-to-day as a CEO?
So earlier when I said, we can say no to clients, we say no to them because they may not align with with those values, or they may harm. So they a business as a cell may not actually harm the body, but I mean, we just may not belong together, right? So I may be a cell, our business might be a cell, their business might be a cell, but together we don't really help the body. We just kind of bump into each other. So that's the way I kind of look at things. If we're doing a mural for a business that is that has no business doing mural artwork, I mean, then we're going to say no to it. I mean, but then it gets less obvious than that, right? I mean, they could be a business that it could be a bar that sells alcohol, and because my personal values and the rules I've made up for myself are you don't do business with a business that harms people. In my eyes, alcohol is more of a tool of harm than it is for help, and so our business kind of follows those same values of mine, and we don't do business with bars. So um, it helps, in that sense, but it's also helped me personally. I love helping people out, and because I'm kind of a compassionate and I try and be thoughtful, and and my meaning is found by doing acts of kindness for others. Sometimes that act of kindness for others can harm me, and so if I'm going to help myself, then I have to assess, okay, is this thing that I'm going to do for this person going to help them and help me? Because if it's anything other than that, like, I have to really reconsider doing it. So it's really helped me, because if my decisions are based off of those values, then I get to say yes and no to things that will, I mean, essentially keep me in like this like kind of safe area. If I'm driven by money, I mean, anything kind of goes, right? Like, I mean, that's why a lot of us actually end up in prison. I mean, I could have easily ended up in that area too, because in my upbringing, there were some things that I had, done in my past that weren't really legal, and seemed harmless at the moment, but to the system and society could be seen as illegal, and harm somebody else. And so um, by instilling those values and only making decisions based off of guiding through those, and not just the pursuit of money, I've opened myself up to just protecting and being kind to myself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think that's
So,
really, it's a really holistic approach to sort of an ethical, professional, and individual life. Um, it, I mean, it sounds to me that you lead your company as a CEO based on the values that you hold as an individual. So there's a real sense of unification. Again, like I feel like there's we're keep coming back to this idea of like, how do we unify ourself, our past, our professional goals?
right.
How do we make that one solid entity, really driven by the things that we care about? And I think for you, that, I mean, those things seem like they're really falling into place. Like, you really, the not falling into place so much as you've methodically chosen to pursue your principles as an individual, in your professional world as well, and that is part of the reason why you are so successful, and why you're so happy doing what you do as well, because it brings you joy, and you feel good about what you're giving to the world, and what you're sharing with the world through art and through business as well. So I
Yeah,
think it's super great.
thanks. I mean, you put that a lot more eloquently than I would have, and I've got to say the reason why it feels so easy for me to do that is because I mean I've just instilled it in my life, but I've also run a very small company, so it's not hard to find people to like rally around the same ideas. But I mean, if I was a company that wasn't a small business and I had 500 employees, I mean, it becomes a lot more difficult to instill those kind of cultural values. And I applaud anybody who's working to do that, especially in today's climate. It's oftentimes the conversation at the forefront of a business, whereas in the last 10 years, kind of the guiding conversation around businesses was how they were going to grow utilizing design.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how now that switched to how are you going to grow by being more inclusive and
Mhm.
being, in holding on to and owning diversity. And it's a difficult conversation. Like a lot of people, a lot of big companies with a lot of money are failing miserably at it. And it's sad to see it happen, but you're just also at the same time, it's those times of tumult and adversity that we really kind of get these experiences and we can say, we can make these realizations and drive change. And I think we're in that period right now with this double pandemic happening. Like this is, I mean, I think looking back on this, 10 years from now, we're going to feel like this is when we had the most growth
Mhm.
as a society globally. And so, we'll see what happens. Maybe it's not, I'm not going to put my like political views into this, but it could be a disaster.
Um, well, thinking about diversity and adversity and sort of inclusivity, as someone with a criminal record, what hurdles have you faced when entering the professional sphere? And do you have any advice for people who are looking
Oh.
to overcome similar hurdles?
Yes, absolutely. I think for anybody that's in the system right now, whether they're waiting pre-trial, they've gone through trial, they're in the sentence right now, or after, we all know that it's really difficult to get a job. Most of us feel like it's impossible to do so. And for a lot of businesses, it's not an option. So it can be very difficult, especially if we're looking to the kind of standard that's set by society, and if we're approaching it in that sense. So my piece of advice to anybody that may be have some kind of marker on them that could sway the decision of a hiring manager, and it doesn't even have to be a criminal record. It could be uh, um, um, it could be the culture of somebody. Like that could, I mean, it's not supposed to legally, but it does affect some people's decision. It's not the right thing to do, but a lot of people do it. And also like our, spiritual beliefs, that can really change somebody's decision if they're going to hire us. So I've experienced a lot of things. The first piece of advice I'm going to give is that you just stay open-minded about things. And like really the way I kind of like talk to other people about this is like, just like try and become one with the earth. Like listen out, just be open when people say things and really start to consider them, not measured by the person who is saying them, but for what the message is itself. And I think that's really helped me. And my intuition, there's moments where my intuition has led me into a different direction. And when I look back, a lot of the times that I let my intuition kind of make the first decision, it's ended up in a good place. And when I reconsider, I say, yeah, that's not going to happen. It ends up badly sometimes. And so it doesn't always happen like that, but our bodies and our minds, like they're pretty magical. We don't really understand them entirely, but they're a pretty good, we can be pretty good judges of things if we listen to ourselves. The second piece of advice is to stay open-minded about what you're going to get started with. Coming out of prison, everybody wants to do really well, especially when you're equipped with the knowledge of entrepreneurship that you get through the prison entrepreneurship program. I got to say that although this is an incredible program, some people who make it through have the mindset that like, now I'm equipped with this, I'm going to go out and make $1 million in my first year. And they still hold on to those like monetary goals instead of like creating other forms of success. Like decide, well, I'll get to that later on, but you can decide what success looks like for your business. If you are going to go after a career, stay open-minded. When I came out, my goal first off was to start paying some bills because I owed a lot of money. And I mean, I was on this Scram monitor, which is an ankle bracelet that measures the alcohol levels in your sweat. And that thing is $360 a month. And so for people who are coming out and don't have the support of family and friends and have to provide for themselves, you have to take what you can get. And for me, that was coming home and taking the closest job that I could walk to every morning. And that was working at a burger house or a burger restaurant in Houston. And I got paid like, I think it was like $7.75 an hour, which is just above minimum wage. But I worked like crazy. And I treated that job like I owned it. Like I did whatever, but I did everything I could to make sure that business was a success. It just so happened that that business had just started up maybe a month or two before I started there. So there was a lot of things that they were still experiencing that I had experience in, and I just kind of offered up information. I was a burger cook, but I also like led some team meetings when the manager really didn't know what they were doing. I didn't go out and say, "Hey, he doesn't know what he's doing. I should have his job." I was like, "No, let me just help the team out." And when you kind of act as a team player, if it's beneficial for you and the team, just go for it, do it. Act like you're making $20 an hour, $30 an hour, even though you may not. Just make what you can to get the bills paid. Then I spent every other moment just really looking for the next opportunity. And I found it in some really random places, like places that I didn't expect. I mean, my second job was at a paintball park, and I just wanted to be the manager of the paintball park because they offered like $9 an hour, and I was like, okay, that's better than $7.75. Let me go for that next step. So 3 months after I got the burger job, I started looking at this place, and I met with them and I interviewed with them, and the initial interview just led me to believe this is not what I was expecting. This is not like just some backwoods uh, paintball park where they don't care, just come in, grab your gun and go. They were a bit like service-driven industry, and I learned a lot from them. They basically, when I interviewed with them, they said we're a micro Disney World in paintball. Like we are the experience. We pick up your trash after you just drop it. We will help you even though that's not our job. Like we are here to serve the customer. And because of that, this paintball park, which is probably the smallest paintball park in Texas, was making 10 times what anybody else in the state was making, and it was nuts. So I learned that service driven industry or business model could really help out. Anyways, I took those experiences and tried to add them to what I was going to do myself. I feel like just coming out of a situation, whether it's again pretrial, trial, or coming out of prison or jail, like it's a good place to start. I don't want to like get into all the other stuff because then it starts to get really deep. But I am going to say that like I want to open up the floor and for an opportunity to go deeper into that, or you to connect us, me with somebody who wants to learn more. And that's really another arm of the publications that I put out is to kind of, put it out there that I am here to talk with others and to help.
That's amazing. So thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely make sure our students know that and that they can, reach out to you if they have specific questions or need some sort of support in that way. I think the advice that you just gave is relevant both to our students and to most of us, right? Is that you don't just wake up one day and be a successful CEO. There are many steps that feel maybe off the path, like you've
Yeah.
left your path and you've wound up somewhere else, and that in the end you can take something away from that step and realize, actually no, I thought my path was a straight line and it turned out that it was, I went backwards a little bit, I went way west, I went
It
way east.
it never is, like, literally. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. You could, I mean, and you know this, I mean, but anybody who might be listening to this could literally go find a book, a biography about somebody who has become something or been successful, whether it's like a business or just their, an initiative or philanthropy, and they're going to tell you like how they ended up there was this crazy like storm of like weird experiences. But what the trending theme I think is through that entire thing is that they were aware and cognizant of what was going on and how it was impacting their life. And a lot of times we don't see that in the present or even looking towards the future, but looking in retrospect. And so although our past, we always say like, our past is not, it's not important. Our past is the past. you know, there's a lot of things that happen in the past, but we can look back to them and really assess things that happened in the past and learn from them to move forward, and and to where it'll help us. If we completely ignore the past, we're gonna stumble a lot in life, and that's what I was doing. That's what so many other people do. It's just like, I just want to go for that over there, and we head towards that, forgetting everything that happened in the past, and we keep stumbling.
Mhm.
Sometimes for some of us, that means ending up in jail for a second time, ending up in prison, getting a third DWI, like, and we wonder why the hell the world treats us like this. And a lot of times we don't understand, like, it's us doing it to ourselves. Like, so, I mean, that went off into some like esoteric kind of
No, that's, I mean,
stuff,
it's
but,
great. I think it's very
but
honest.
it's true. It's
Well,
true.
yeah. Well, that kind of, I think the idea of not always leaving your past in your past and realizing that there are things that you can take from your past into your future and integrate them in a really healthy, successful way. I think it's a great segue into my next question, which would be, would you say the skills that you learned and practiced while incarcerated are relevant to your work as a CEO today?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The biggest thing for me is my my craving to be as authentic as possible, and I like to attribute that viewpoint from my experiences in prison, because when you're in the world, you can have many things that make you seem like somebody that you're not. When
Mhm.
you go to prison, you are stripped of everything. Like, this is it. You are who you present yourself to be. And, the stories, all of the wonderful things you've done before you came to prison are just left to, the decision to believe those things is left to the person listening. And oftentimes it's like, if it's something that is like kind of astronomical, people don't believe you. I mean, I met people that said that they made $100,000 a month, selling drugs while they're in prison. I'm like, okay, you know what, that doesn't mean anything, because what that was, I mean, happened then. And you can't even like prove that to me right now. So, what really ended up sticking was just what you experienced from that person in that moment. And so, for me, that's where I learned a lot about my self-entitlement. They called me a Mr. Know-it-all, and I started to wonder, like, why the hell do these people think that way of me? Like, I'm trying to be, cool with everybody. But I learned a lot, and it comes down to like being a person of your word and doing what you're saying you're going to do. And that kind of like integrity to me was just so valuable. And I looked up to so many people that I met in prison because they exemplified that.
Mhm.
And quite honestly, some of my friendships with people that were with other men that were in prison were stronger bonds than some of the relationships that I've had out here in the world, because that is it was what it was, is you have who you are at that moment, and that's what you base your judgment off of, and there's nothing else to go by. So that's the biggest thing. And then next is just that my time in prison afforded the opportunity to do a lot of introspection, and a lot of reading, a lot of self-studying. And it was that opportunity to get the self-study from all the the no's that I said to opportunities before prison, like, finishing college and things like that. I said no because of the distractions. But when I was here, I was able to go back and say, oh, I wanted to learn more about that. And I just go get a book from the library and read about it. And, and I was thankful for that. So um, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I think those are really good examples of ways that you've transferred the skills that you sort of learned and practiced and refined, you could say.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sorry, I didn't quite answer that question. There was some stuff that I left out, but yeah, you're right. To transfer those experiences out here, after learning all those things, whether it be self-study or just an experience, I wrote down a plan for myself.
mhm,
And that was what I really loved about that. It was a plan of what I was going to do when I faced some of the adversity and some of the challenges that I am today. And I used my past to assess that. If I come across a friend that has a beer, I decided to stop drinking. What am I going to do? And I wrote down literally every single instance that could be, and it was personal temptations, but also business temptations. If I was offered $100,000 to do this project, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna say yes immediately, or what questions am I gonna ask before I decide to move in either direction? And I think that creating that plan and creating plans in general is a very important tool to kind of like build a set of guidelines to guide yourself with, whether it be for your business or for your personal life. And I did that while I was in prison. I'm glad I did it there because I didn't have all the distractions and I didn't have all the things that would sway my judgment on an outcome. And so I transferred them out by writing them on paper and bringing them with me.
mhm. Amazing. Um, yeah, I think that's it's the kind of work that we all should do and we don't all have the opportunity to do or take the time to do, which is, I think, what I'm hearing you say is that, right? Like, it takes time
Oh
and
yeah.
dedication to do that kind of work. And it's easy when you clock out of work at the end of the day to watch Netflix and not self-reflect and not figure out how you want to be and operate as a CEO or a person. And it's
It's
okay
way
to
too
do a
easy.
little bit of both,
A
but
little bit, yeah.
it is
But it's
important to do the hard work too.
it's way too easy to do that out here. I mean, it just is. Like, I mean, I read like a book every 2 or 3 days, when I had the time to do it. But after coming home, like, I'll be honest, like, I've read like 10 books in 3 years. Like, I mean, it's not like nothing. Like, I want to read so much more. I want to do so much more, but it's hard, and I mean, in prison, everything's scheduled out for you. You don't have the distractions of social media and apps and technology. And I mean, the Apple iStore. I mean, I'm sounding like really ridiculous right now. The Apple App Store is they have over 1 million apps. So, like, I mean, just to think about that, like,
Mhm.
you come out, like, you just look at all this great technology and all this wonderful stuff that is going to help you increase your life. Those are distractions to me. Like, even today, like, I mean, picking out a program to manage my client relationships has oftentimes been harder than just learning to do it on paper. It's really weird. But um,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that there's so many distractions in this world, and it's hard to decipher like what you're going to do, and it will slow down.
Mhm.
Your attention span and your focus will kind of dissipate a little bit because there's a lot more things to pay attention to in the world. So I mean, I many people don't see prison or jail time as an opportunity, but it is. And
Mhm.
it's an opportunity to utilize the time that you have, which is the most precious and rarest resource on this planet. Our time. We never get it back. We can get money back. We can get a lot of these things back,
Mhm.
but we can't get our time back. And so to utilize it to the best of our ability, I think is the best thing that we can do while we're there.
Well, I feel like you may have just answered the next question I was going to ask you sort of intuitively, which was I understand that you were in prison, but our students are pretrial inmates, so they face sort of different circumstances than many other students who attend prison education programs.
Okay.
Um, do you have any advice or counsel that you could offer them based on their current position, right, which is usually one that's filled with uncertainty?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the answers could go so many directions depending on what their status is with the pretrial. I mean, some people right now watching this may be innocent and are trying to fight that shove that they're getting towards conviction. So, I mean, if that's you, then do everything you can to educate yourself on what's going on right now. I have no legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, but do everything you can. Use every resource that you can to find out what's going on with your life right now, whether it be like in trial or also like your characteristics before going to trial. I mean, that's hurt a lot of people. I've seen it. A lot of people will bring their emotions, pride, and to the table when they're at trial, and it ends up harming them a lot. And so, um, getting emotionally in tune and getting as knowledgeable on your current situation as you can. That's my advice. If you're pre-trial and man, you did something wrong and you're gonna do some time for it, start making the decision to like to start making a decision and zoom in on like what you want to do while you're there. Um, I mean, like I said, there weren't a lot of opportunities for me because I had such a short sentence. I mean, considering like the variability, the scale of sentence, 2 years is kind of like the minimum, a lifetime is kind of the maximum. And I was nowhere near that end of the spectrum. So I say a little bit of time because it was 2.5 years. Um, but I would say, because of that, I wasn't open to a lot of programs. I got lucky that I was even considered for the PEP program. There's 100,000 inmates in Texas prisons at any given time, and it's a rotating system. But uh, only about 1,000 are considered every 6 months or a year for this program. And so, if you do find yourself doing some prison time and you want to learn more about the PEP program, um, um, well, I guess I don't know. Can I give an address? Like, I mean, you can write these people, or can I send it to
I can,
you? How
yeah,
how can we
if you
do
send
that?
it to me, I can make sure that it's
Okay.
accessible. Hmm.
Yeah, you can write them and just, I mean, they typically say don't write them, but I mean, I've seen it work. Sometimes there was one guy who sent like 30 letters to this place and they eventually like was like, okay, we'll consider you. They won't consider you if you have a sex offense, or I think that's the only thing that will really keep you from exiting. And I think you have to be within 3 years of your uh, sentence ending, and that includes parole. So they will consider that. If you have a 10-year sentence and you're going to get out in 3 years, then they'd still consider you. Um, so yeah, and then if you're, I mean I guess that kind of answers both sides. If you're going to go to prison, man, just decide what you're going to do. Decide what you're going to learn, and which is hard. But if you want to be a business person and learn more about business, there's lots of business books, there's lots of programs that you could write, but just use your time wisely. That's the most general advice I could give.
I think it's great advice. It's essential advice. Um, well, I only have one more question for you. I'm really, really grateful that we're getting to have this conversation, and I've learned so much just by listening to you speak. And I know that this is going to be really informative for all of our students too. So I just wanted to end today by asking you what you're working on currently. Could you tell me a little bit about some of your most recent projects?
Sure. So right now, I'm kind of at this transitional moment in my career. Part of my life is to pursue and do things because they're meaningful to me, and in order to do that, like I have to be able to pay the bills, and so I have to make money in my business. is structured so that it can make money. But it's structured in a way that we can go out and do things for people who don't have money. So this year alone, because of COVID and everything happening, like I felt this big urge to be a resource for people who didn't have a voice or an ability to do something, or they just needed some help. And I overextended myself. Like there goes that side of me again, who just wants to do kindness for everybody. So I have recently decided to pull away from the majority of the volunteer-based projects that I'm doing in order to better position my business to open more opportunities like that in the future. And what that means for us is yes, we are a small team, but I need to grow my team out more to take care of the activities that I do personally for the business. And if I can position my business to do that, I'm going to free up more time for myself so I can plan these larger projects that are going to impact more communities. And so right now, um, I mean, when somebody asks me a question like that, typically I talk about a mural project that we're doing, but right now we're doing an internal project and we're doing an audit and we're figuring out what we want to do, and we're realizing the limitations that our current model has, and we're reevaluating those things and we're restructuring them, and we're having lots of conversations with professionals in those sectors, some of them communication based, so we're out talking to people that are copywriters and communication strategists. And we're also in an area where we're trying to start to do outbound marketing. So we want, up until this point, all of our businesses come from word of mouth and people reaching out to us. But we have clients that we potentially want to do work for, which have big bankrolls, right? They're usually like companies like Coca-Cola and Nike. We want to do work for them because we want to say, hey, we want to charge you X amount of dollars for this project, but half of that is going to go to doing free stuff in these other neighborhoods. They're more likely to be in a position organizationally and revenue wise to do that. So we're trying to position ourselves to be able to do work for those kinds of companies so we can give out, be in a position to create more opportunity to do these philanthropic pursuits that we have. So that's our internal project right now, and we hope that it's meaningful because it's going to make a bigger impact with the things that really matter to us.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds exciting. It also reminds me of earlier when we said sometimes your path doesn't always feel like it's straightforward. Like this is a moment of growth, it seems like, for United by Design. And sometimes moments of growth really feel chaotic and like they're not forward focused, even though they are. And they're sort of those moments that push you into a new space. So I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with and sort of where you go from here. I'm sure we're going to see your artwork around. Um, and again, I just wanted to thank you so, so much for spending time with me today and spending some time talking to our students, because I think that sort of your story is so important. And I think that the story of authenticity that you bring to the table is something that it's like really important that other people hear and learn from. And so thank you so, so much for talking to me.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's been an incredible pleasure. The interactions that we've had today and even before today have been awesome. I was really looking forward to today's interview. I hope it's meaningful and impactful for somebody. And I hope it wasn't just me rambling. But
No,
if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm absolutely available and we'll make time. Uh, I, from I remember you saying that most of the gentlemen that are going to see this, or individuals that will see this, are in Austin, right? So that's just down the street from us. You know, we don't do any work in Austin right now, but we're considering it. It's a very saturated market, and we're only getting involved with organizations out there. But you will be able to see some of our artwork in Austin. But for the majority, we're doing work in Houston. About 90% of our work is out there. There's a lot of growth happening out there right now. If you're looking for something, a new area to get out of your old funk and get into something new, Houston's popping. They got a lot of work out there. It's great. And then we do some stuff in San Antonio, and we're making our way to Dallas. But we've also done some projects in like San Diego, done some stuff in Chicago and
awesome.
New York. So we're all over the place. So reach out. I mean, and also if you're creative, if you're an artist and you paint, I want to know you for sure. Like I want to make more opportunities for individuals who've been in my shoes and who share same life experiences. So
Awesome. All right.
I'm
Well,
here.
thank you so much.